The cost of inaction is really scary. How far are we prepared to fall?
Key parts of the nation's infrastructure system are at a breaking point.
More than 56,000 American bridges are in urgent need of major repairs or replacement.
America's underinvestment in infrastructure could undermine America's global competitiveness.
C1 Alpha, take one, AB Mark.
Brendan Bechtel, Chairman and CEO of Bechtel. We're doing about 100 major projects around the world in 40 different countries at any given point in time. We haven't just fallen behind, we are behind the rest of the world when it comes to the quality of our infrastructure. We have kind of drifted as a nation into tolerating mediocrity for too long, and it's having very real impacts today on people, on workers, on our economy, on our global competitiveness. And this right now, this is our chance to do something about it.
My name is Beth Ford, and I'm the president and CEO of Land O'Lakes. When we think of infrastructure, we think of roads and bridges and tunnels and waterways, and those need investment, significant investment. We haven't been doing that work. But then I think of infrastructure of the future. I think of technology, and especially broadband and access to technology. And there we have not invested broadly across the United States. There are clearly areas of the country that have had significant gaps. We need to continue to invest. It's like doing preventative maintenance on your car. And then we need to think forward. What about infrastructure of the future, especially the access to technology?
I'm Scott Kirby, the CEO of United Airlines. I've been in the aviation industry for decades. As the economy is growing and air traffic has grown significantly every year, infrastructure investments have lagged so far behind the increase in passenger demand for travel. And I'm sure most of you that are watching this fly, and you've experienced those frustrating situations where weather comes through and it doesn't even last that long and it leads to a massive amount of delays. That's because we have a system where we're trying to cram 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag because the 5-pound bag worked 30 years ago, but now we need a 10-pound bag. And we simply haven't kept up with the infrastructure investment.
I'm Joshua Bolten. I'm president and CEO of Business Roundtable. Policymakers on both sides of the aisle have been talking about dealing with America's crumbling infrastructure for a very long time. And everybody's agreed it needs to happen, but there's never been the political will to come together. And so it's a real breakthrough that a bipartisan group in this very difficult political environment has come together and agreed on a proposal with the president. That's a watershed moment. We think it's a terrific proposal. We support it 100%, and we will put the full weight of our advocacy behind it.
Here at Bechtel, we've been at this, designing, building, and managing large projects for more than 120 years, 5 generations. So we have this very deeply held belief based on what we've seen around the world that infrastructure has this incredible power to transform lives, to lift people out of poverty, to provide access to economic opportunity and growth. This moment right now in our nation's history, it's about catching up with what we've not been doing for many, many years. We need policy that's durable, that's integrated across all the different agencies of the government. That can only happen through a bipartisan legislative process. It would be really nice to demonstrate to the nation that we can come together, that we can find common ground, that we can achieve a bipartisan outcome right now. I think we're all looking for some optimism and some inspiration coming out of the pandemic that we can all come together and unite as a nation to tackle a challenge that's been really evading us for 15, 20 years now from a funding perspective.
Physical infrastructure is literally and figuratively the on-ramp to the highway for individuals, for small businesses, for large businesses. And without first-class physical infrastructure, we will never have first-class output in the country. Whether it's our roads, our bridges, our railways, the ports, our airports, the digital infrastructure to support a broadband economy. Those are the on-ramps that allow the creativity of the American economy, the entrepreneurship of the American economy to thrive. But without that playing field where they can get on the playing field and compete with the rest of the world, we're playing with one hand tied behind our back.
I think of it as the ability to move goods, the ability to get a truck on the farm, the ability to move grain off of a farm or dairy off of a farm, the ability to export. And then more broadly, I remind people that farmers are raising families. 95% of farms are still family owned. This is about families and inequities and opportunities and all of us wanting to live in a vibrant, connected environment, and that underinvestment in physical infrastructure and technological infrastructure causes that to be problematic.
And if we find one bottleneck where the infrastructure doesn't allow us to operate efficiently, it winds up not just affecting that one part of the economy. It has ripple effects that go throughout the economy. You look at our ports and the backlog at ports as we try to get in and out of the country. Our air traffic control system, while we may have some great facilities in the country, airplanes still fly highway in the skies that look a lot like the highways we flew 70 or 80 years ago, instead of using GPS technology that exists in your cars today. A modernized air traffic control system would be 10 to 15% faster travel for our customers, with more capacity, fewer delays at airports, but importantly, a 10 to 15% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And that's just an example of the power of infrastructure investments if done smartly.
The principle of user pays or user fees is it feels like a naturally American concept to me. It's like the notion of working for a living to earn a living. And the basic principle of it is that you need to connect the costs and the benefits of infrastructure. So you need to connect the costs of developing and planning and delivering and building and maintaining infrastructure with the users who benefit from its existence.
That means that the people who are making the most use of an element of infrastructure are the ones that pay for it. We're used to that in our everyday lives. The electric wire that comes into your house, you're accustomed to paying your electric bill. Water and sewer to your house, you're accustomed to paying a water bill. When you fly on an airplane, you need the airport and you need all of the facilities around the airport. Our airplane tickets have a tax that helps pay for that. That's the right way to fund infrastructure, is through the user pays, and we strongly support that.
If you use it, you pay for it. And I think we would even say that it's okay for businesses to maybe pay a little bit more. Keep in mind right now, 2.7% of the federal budget goes into infrastructure. That's declined over time. As a point of reference, China spends about 8% of its GDP on infrastructure, so we got a lot of room for improvement. The cost of inaction, we're already suffering from it. Infrastructure spending and investment is not like a nice bottle of wine. It does not get better with time. It just gets worse. The problem gets bigger. It gets harder to solve. Think about how many people can't be connected or aren't connected to broadband right now, and the economic opportunity that would be unleashed if they could be connected to a modern economy that's increasingly online.
What did we see in the pandemic? All of this was in sharp relief. Farmers had to take their children to the local Dairy Queen or the 7-Eleven in town to park to get enough bandwidth so they could finish their homework on their phone. Or the teachers, and some schools in these rural areas don't have technology, had to drive out to the farm to give paper homework. Can you imagine? This leaves us less competitive. The great thing is that during the pandemic, and even before, I talked to a number of senators, I talked to different administrations, governors, everything. This is not a debate. That is not a debate. Everybody agrees we must close this digital divide. This isn't a partisan issue. This is bipartisan.
We have a deal on that $1 trillion-plus infrastructure plan to rebuild America's roads, bridges, and so much more.
The president standing with Republicans and Democrats by his side.
This is a rare bipartisan agreement, but there is still a long road ahead.
I'm optimistic because that bipartisan group has done a really good job of finding the consensus point, finding the sweet spot, finding the center where Americans can agree. The bipartisan framework very smartly adopts a variety of ways to cover the cost. There's an opportunity to deploy unused funds from the previous COVID relief packages. There's an opportunity to increase enforcement of our tax laws so that everybody is paying their fair share. There are public-private partnerships that can be deployed that offset the cost. And if we can't fully cover the cost with other measures, then if there's ever a place where it's worth borrowing some extra money to cover the cost of a public good, this is it. Our studies show that every dollar spent on infrastructure creates $4 of growth in the economy. That's a really good multiplier.
A major source of funding for infrastructure going forward, the Business Roundtable believes, should be how do we mobilize more private capital, which wants to flow into infrastructure. The ways that we would do that would be things like streamlining the permitting process, particularly at the federal level. That doesn't mean getting rid of any of the environmental or social protections that are so important. It means coordinating so that there's one agency in charge of all the permits for a highway project, and it all happens in 2 years rather than 6 or 7 different agencies over 10 years, which adds a ton of risk in terms of schedule and cost to a project.
The bipartisan framework presents a terrific opportunity for the American economy and really just for the average American. But I think the best way for the average American family to understand it is that our study showed that it would mean that the average American family would have $1,800 more in disposable income every year for 20 years. For most families, that's a big number.
What we need to do is not shortcut this. I don't want to be like, the pizza delivery guys at the door and we're in the couch looking for quarters and nickels to fill the bill. That doesn't work. We have to move and say, if this is important, if we believe it's critical, we should invest accordingly. You don't shortcut this. This is an investment for the future. It's not an expense. It's an investment.
What this bill will hopefully do, an infrastructure bill can do, is create jobs, be a big stimulus to the economy, in the next few years. But more importantly, it's not just about stimulus in the near term. This is about investment in the future. For all of us in business, it's like spending money on a capital investment. You spend the money today, you get some boost today, but then it continues to pay you dividends for 30, 40, 50 years into the future, and it creates the foundation that everything else can be built on top of.
We've just gone through just a terribly difficult, year and a half of this pandemic. And it's time for us to be our best selves, the best Americans that we are, where we're in an urgent situation. When does that always happen? Somebody from outside was attacking us, and suddenly we're all in this together. And that feeling like, yes, we're Americans. That's what I want to say. Reminder, this is that urgent. Infrastructure, physical infrastructure, technological infrastructure, it is that urgent. It leaves us less competitive on the world stage. And if we want to continue to have the best country in the world, the best economy in the world, the safest location in the world where people want to come, this is the time to come together. Now, I'm encouraged because when I'm in conversations with both sides of the aisle, they're ready to get it done. This is the time to show that bipartisanship and to invest appropriately for the future.
To everyone in Congress, please find a way to get this over the finish line as a bipartisan bill. This can be a huge win for U.S. workers, for their families, for the U.S. economy, for bipartisanship in the country. And it will be so much better if it's bipartisan, even if it doesn't have everything that you as an individual would like it to have. after everything we've been through in the last 18 months and going through the pandemic, being able to find ways to unify the country and find goals that we can be ambitious, that we can dream, that we can build big things and accomplish great things together, I hope and believe can be more important than just what it means for the infrastructure. It can be a launching pad for finding other areas where we can agree and find ways to move the country forward.
Over the past several years, every year there's been an infrastructure week and nothing ever happened. So it became a running joke, Infrastructure Week, and nothing happens. Well, this is Infrastructure Week, and something has happened.
That question, we have a deal.
The bipartisan group of 21 senators, the president, the rest of his administration, they all deserve a huge amount of credit for having arrived at the bipartisan framework. It is a great piece of work and deserves the support of every member of Congress. We're urging the members who are not yet on board this infrastructure train, get on board. It's time now for infrastructure in America to be upgraded to 21st century standards, and we need the help of the whole political system to get there.
Think back to the triumph of the Hoover Dam during the depths of the Great Depression. Think about how we came together and built shipyards and industrial infrastructure to help win World War II. Think about how as a nation we imagined and then we built the interstate highway system to better connect our 50 states. Now it's our turn. This is our chance to commit that we want to win. We're Americans. This is what we do. We dream big, we aim high, we come together as a team, and we build together and we win together. So let's go do it.